The PS1 was such a versatile machine and had tons of great games that pleased every type of gamer. One of my favorite genres are third-person shooters, and so in this episode of the Big Retro Show, I'll go over some that you might want to check out on the good old PS1. We kick things off with a game that I am extremely happy I played for this episode, as it missed me back in the day. Of course, I'm talking about C12 Final Resistance. Take everything that I love about the good old PS1. Guns, Terminator-like androids, lots of explosions and big boss fights, and you get C12 Final Resistance. You play as Lieutenant Vaughn, a futuristic soldier who received cyborg implants at the expense of his looks. He is a cyborg that is disturbing to look at, yet is a person you want fighting cyborgs who are threatening humankind. Sure, this is sort of a ripoff of Terminator, and well, RoboCop, but it works here too. At its core, C12 Final Resistance is a third-person shooter that offers quite a bit of puzzle solving to help you take on the game's missions. You start out with a plasma sword and quickly grow your arsenal as the game progresses. Each of your guns is a primary and secondary fire, and this can be useful, especially when you're getting swarmed by cyborgs. The game lets you lock on to targets, which becomes an essential part of the combat. Without it, this game would be difficult to play, mostly due to the bad camera angles that most of these PS1 games tend to suffer from. The other gameplay mechanic that is quite useful in this game is the shield. You will be using this a lot, as well as some areas have turrets that you need to sneak past with your shield activated to take out the Borgs manning or roboting the turrets. Most enemies consist of these cyborg dudes, drones, and other mechanical nightmares. Killing them will often yield health and ammo drops, which is welcome. I never felt that the ammo or health were lacking in this game. That is until I reached the later levels when the game became a bit more stingier with the health drops. You'll be doing a lot of going into one area, getting a key, backtracking to a locked door, opening the door, getting a code, and well, you get the point. The boss fights in this game are fun, especially when taking them out with the larger weapons like this rocket launcher. The game's graphics are not bad for a PS1 game, but the music could use a little work. There's a lack of music that inspires me to take the fight to the enemy. It needs more metal. The game is told through cutscenes and you are in constant contact with your handlers. Sort of reminds me of the Metal Gear games, but are way shorter. In all, this game is worth a playthrough on the PS1 and one that I haven't heard anyone on YouTube talk about.
Hey sir, take this key card. You're gonna need it to get through to Colonel Grisham.
I gotta tell you, my PS1 didn't know what hit it after popping in Danger Girl. I was actually expecting this game to be a little janky, and it was a little, but I'm glad I played it because it's a true blue hidden gem on the PS1. Danger Girl is based on a comic book that features a crack team of female spies who jet set around the world and attempt to foil evil doings. Think a cross between James Bond and Lara Croft. In doing research for this game, I saw that the game got generally unfavorable reviews. Well, I had fun with it, although this game can be frustrating in the way that a lot of these old school PS1 games could be. At its core, Danger Girl is a third-person action shooter with light puzzle solving and platforming, wrapped up with cheesy dialogue and those classic blocky PS1 graphics. During each mission, you take control of one of the Danger Girls, and you are armed with various weapons and equipment. Equipment? You roam around each stage taking out bad guys, collecting necessary supplies and equipment, and handle mini-tasks that are presented as the story unfolds. The game features an auto-targeting system that can be turned off, but trust me, you wouldn't want to. The game's controls can be a bit frustrating until you get the hang of them. The L2 and R2 buttons let your character strafe, which comes in handy and basically serves in the same way as a left control stick does in modern third-person shooters. That being said, the game does have some jank collision detection, and the shooting mechanics need a bit of work as well. But when you do hit your enemy, it's super satisfying. While most of the game is played from a third-person viewpoint, you can switch into a first-person viewpoint that is solely used for aiming your guns, which means you can't move while you're in this mode. It's a mechanic that works during certain parts of the game, but you wouldn't want to take most of your enemies out in this way. Part of the fun in this game is the run and gun shooting that is to be had. And oh my god, is this game's dialogue pure cheese, but I have to say it is a likable sort of cheese. It's so funny hearing some of the guards yell when you take them out. It's almost like they lost a huge hand at poker or something, and you know, not lost their life or anything. I'd have to say that I probably wouldn't be yelling had I just got shot. Anywho, the game's graphics are part of that era of gaming, meaning they are a bit blocky and the girls and others don't move their mouths when they talk. They would be great ventriloquists if the whole spy thing didn't work out. As I mentioned, each stage has its different sub-goals, and they can be quite frustrating, especially in the second stage, when you are tasked to rescue these workers. Taking the slightest misstep will get them killed, so you must approach each of these encounters carefully. Danger Girl is a game that I hadn't heard anyone talk about on YouTube, and so I'm glad that I got to play this for the episode. If you have played this game, let me know what you think of it in the comments below. Guys, I've been waiting a long time to talk about Akuji The Heartless. I used to play this game back in the day, but never actually beat it. This is one of these games that stuck with me, not because it's the greatest third-person shooter / brawler on the PS1, it's because of the protagonist, and especially the story. You play as Akuji, this voodoo-style warrior who's out to get revenge against his own brother, who interrupted his wedding night to Kesha by murdering him and the entire wedding party. Kesha was taken hostage and was to be sacrificed to the voodoo gods. That is, if you're lame and you don't do anything about it. Akuji the Heartless takes place in the netherworld, and you meet a voodoo god named the Baron, who promises to return you to the world of the living if you help him purge the netherworld of your wretched family members.
You need not find them all. Some are more corrupt than others.
Apparently, your brother isn't the only bad apple in that family. Of course you agree, because nothing is sweeter than revenge, and thus you embark on a quest to rid the netherworld of your ancestors. So I know I cheated a bit because this game isn't a third-person shooter in its purest form. It combines third-person shooting and brawling with a hefty dose of platforming that makes for one of the best games on the PS1. The controls in this game are rather simple. You can jump, crawl, sidestep, and attack with your blades and several spells you find across the worlds. You're going to need the controls to be tight in this game because the camera is pure jank. Sadly, most PS1 game cameras are jank, with some exceptions of course. But this game demands your undivided attention because you control the camera by pressing L1 or R1, and it can be quite the exercise for your hands. At any rate, the platforming can be tough because let's face it, controlling the camera at all times is not the ideal scenario. Each level has tons of items to collect, and you must collect a certain number of ancestral spirits to fight bosses in the game. If you collect 100 voodoo dolls, you get a permanent increase in health. There are keys sprinkled throughout each level that you need to find and place in these altars so doors will open, and you can advance. Sure, this is nothing we haven't seen before, but damn it, it's so cool playing as this voodoo warrior that you sort of, forgive the game for it a little bit. The enemies in this game are mostly of the netherworld variety, such as Grim Reapers, mummies, and several others. Boss fights in this game are actually a lot of fun. The game's graphics and especially its music are both pretty damn good, and fit the era that these games thrived in. This is one of these games that many people missed back in the day, but I think it would be so awesome if they remade the game with modern technology. Literally, I don't think any other YouTuber has ever mentioned this game, and it's a shame. Up next is the game that's based on the film Tomorrow Never Dies. And I know what you're thinking. Here we go again with another game based on a film that's gonna suck. Well, this one is good, sort of. In Tomorrow Never Dies, you play as a debonair James Bond, played by Pierce Brosnan, who might I add is not my favorite actor to play Bond. But in this game, he seems to fit. The game's plot follows closely the events of the movie. You'll be infiltrating enemy airfields, headquarters, and mansions in your attempt to save the world from the game's antagonist, Elliot Carver, a media baron who's trying to start a war between Great Britain and China. So it's up to you to stop the evil Carver, who is played in the film by the great Jonathan Pryce, to prevent World War III. Right off the bat, you will notice that these are some pretty blocky PS1-ish graphics. This isn't a deal breaker though, especially for those who grew up playing the PS1 and thinking at the time the graphics were epic. You control Bond as he takes on a variety of spy missions, and here is probably the game's biggest flaw, its controls. You can move forward and back by pressing the D-pad and strafe using the L2 and R2 buttons, much like you could in Danger Girl. The game is mostly played in the third-person perspective, but you can press R1 to get into a first-person viewpoint if you want to make precision shots. The other thing about this game is that the enemies are bullet sponges. I mean, come on! How many shots from an AK-47 are you going to take before you die? Just die already! The game's targeting system is automatic and a reticle appears, which sort of reminded me of the reticle in Virtua Cop, but the reticle is imprecise and again the enemies take a gang of bullets before dying. Luckily, there are medical packs that you can use to replenish your health, and most every enemy drops bullets you can use to replenish your arms. The game also lets you use special equipment during certain parts of the game, mainly to open doors and other things you must do to progress. Given these flaws, you might be thinking that this game sort of sucks, but I can honestly say that I was having fun with it. There's something about these type of games that I really like, flaws and all. And yes, I know I'm probably looking at this game with nostalgia goggles, but that's okay. The game's voice acting is laughable, and the character models, although they do resemble the actors in the film, are really rather comical because they are so blocky. But hey, that's part of the charm of the PS1 era games. And all, Tomorrow Never Dies will probably not resonate with modern gamers, but it's right up the alley of gamers who grew up playing the PS1. I saved my favorite of these games for last in Apocalypse, starring Bruce Willis. A lot of people may not remember Bruce Willis as being an action hero, but I think he cemented his place in movie history with Die Hard and subsequent movies. In Apocalypse, you play as Bruce Willis, aka Trey Kincaid, a rogue scientist who has broken out of prison and is on a mission to stop, well, the apocalypse. There's this dude named the Reverend who believes that all science is the work of the devil. Sadly, billions and billions of people believe him, including the president, and he manages to outlaw all science. Little does everyone know that he is using science to bring upon the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, triggering the end of the world. The story really doesn't matter, not when there's killing to be done, that is. The first thing I'll mention are the controls. You shoot your weapons by pressing one of the 4 face buttons. The buttons correspond to the direction you want Trey to shoot in. Pressing triangle will have him shoot north. Pressing X will have him shoot south. You get the picture. You can shoot diagonally by pressing 2 of the face buttons at the same time to shoot in that direction. It's all pretty straightforward and adds an arcadey feel to the game. The D-pad moves your character around and you can jump by pressing R1. And kneel/roll by pressing the L1 button. L2 is reserved for choosing your weapon, and R2 will trigger a screen-clearing smart bomb. Most of the fighting takes place in this futuristic landscape and really reminded me of 1 on the PS1. Another game that's set in the future, but that doesn't quite have the 2 that old Bruce Willis has. And what I mean by that is that Bruce Willis is full of one-liners. Eat 'em up! At first, these were amusing, but they got old really fast. It's pretty clear that the game's creators took their influence from games like Duke Nukem 3D, because even Trey uses some of those same one-liners. Of course, they sort of had to, given that Bruce Willis's character in Die Hard came out with so many great one-liners in that film. So maybe they were capitalizing on this. But overall, it is overkill. Speaking of overkill, your enemies are powerless against your guns. You get unlimited machine gun fire, which I love, and find weapons such as flamethrowers and rockets to utterly destroy your enemies. The boss fights in this game are rather forgiving and the smart bombs help quite a bit. The one thing about this game that I really didn't enjoy was all the platforming. There were times when I would make jumps and I know I made them, but missed, including when I was jumping onto this elevator. The game's camera angles can be tricky at times, but they don't get in the way of the enjoyment of the game. It's just a little annoying, but I guess I'll take it. The game is a lot of fun aside from these gripes. Apocalypse is a great third-person run-and-gun shooter that fans of games like 1 will surely enjoy. And that's going to be it for the Big Retro Show. I'll close this episode out with some more great games that I didn't have time to cover in this episode, but that you should really play.
Human saved. Human killed. no way.